Now we're going to be learning how you can best answer part 2 topic cue cards. And in my experience as an IELTS teacher, this is the most worrying section of the IELTS speaking test. And that's because in this part you will need to speak completely without interruptions for between 1 to 2 minutes. We will review exactly what part 2 of the IELTS speaking test is, and by the end of the lesson, you will understand how to make a good plan to help you answer part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. So what exactly is the topic cue card section? Well, this section will last between 3 to 4 minutes. You'll be given a topic cue card asking you to discuss and describe a common topic that you will be familiar with. You're going to have 1 minute to plan and make some notes. You'll be given a piece of paper and you can write down your ideas. You can also look at these whilst you're in the speaking part of this section. You must speak for between 1 to 2 minutes and the examiner will not stop you to ask any questions. I do believe that you should be aiming for at least 1 minute and 30 seconds, as this will give you plenty of time to show off your excellent speaking skills. As I just said, you will be given topics that you are 100% familiar with in some way. So let's take a look at some of the common topics that may come up in part 2. It could be anything from art, travel, photographs, friends, family, education, events, hobbies, asking you to describe an object, or also discussing books. Now, this is only a small selection of the topics that could come up, and I advise that you try and find more example answers on the internet, and also you'll be seeing some in this lesson. Let's take another look at what a topic cue card looks like. Describe an enjoyable event you experienced at school. You should say when it happened, what it was like, where it took place, and explain why it was such a memorable event. So this is what a topic cue card will almost exactly look like. Of course, the topic will be different for you. In the first sentence, you are given what you need to describe and your main topic. The middle section gives you some extra prompts using the 5 W's, which are what, where, when, why, and who. The bottom part of the topic cue card is an extra part of your prompts. Now, there are 4 prompts in total: when it happened, what it was like, where it took place, and why it was such a memorable event. But that doesn't mean to say that you can only talk about those things. You are allowed to discuss things that are not mentioned in the prompts, as long as they are relevant to the topic. So when it comes to planning, what is the best strategy? And I believe using the 5 W's will help you to make some excellent notes. The 5 W's are used by many teachers across the globe to help prompt their students to really describe things in depth. I use them to create my notes as a basis for my answer in part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. And now we're going to look at a few examples of my notes. Let's see the topic cue card that we're going to be making these notes for. Describe an enjoyable event you experienced at school. You should say when it happened, what it was like, where it took place, and explain why it was such a memorable event. And here are my notes. Now, you don't have to write out the 5 W's in full. You could even use signs if that would help you to speed things up. But remember, you only have 1 minute to do this. So let's take a look at my notes now. So what for me would be sports day? That is my most enjoyable, memorable experience from school. Where would be Filston, where I'm from, which is a small village, and I will discuss all the nature and beauty of the place. When it happened, it was June, it was summer, hot and blue skies. These are all things that will prompt me to discuss and extend my answer in part 2. Why? It was to test sporting ability, get parents together and build community. Who? It was a family day. I won the long jump and there was a special guest. So these are the notes that I would make in 1 minute to help and prompt me really answer the cue card in full. Let's take a look at another example against a different topic cue card. Describe a subject you enjoyed studying at school. You should say what it was, where you studied it, when you studied it, and explain why you enjoyed it so much. So my favourite subject that I would talk about is English, where it was in a new class block at the grammar school, which was my old school. When I was 11 to 16 years old. Why? Because I enjoy reading and drama and there were good teachers. Who I learnt about authors, who was Golding, and my favourite teacher who was Mr. Reeves. I'm sure you can see that by using the 5 W's, you can quickly make a plan that will give you a lot of assistance in really extending your discussion. Now I think it would be good to use these notes and the same cue card to show you what an IELTS Part 2 answer might look like. Let's take a look at that now. That's a really difficult question because I enjoyed so many lessons when I was at school. Off the top of my head, English was probably my favourite class. Learning about authors and the history of the language was great. I really started to enjoy this subject when I began my school life at Filston Grammar School. I would have been about 11 years old when I started as a student there. We usually studied English in a new modern facility, which made it very comfortable to spend time in. I think I finished there at about 16. In my honest opinion, English teachers are always the most passionate and interesting to listen to. Mr. Reeves was my favourite teacher during my time at secondary school. We read a book called Lord of the Flies when I was around 14 years old. It's a fiction novel about a group of boys stranded on an island. Another point to add is that English lessons had loads of hilarious drama activities. Some of my classmates hated it, but watching them acting in plays was very funny. I actually quite miss my English lessons. So there you have an extended answer to part 2 in IELTS speaking, using the 5 W's to create notes. And again, I would like to say that you don't have to stick to what you wrote in your notes or the prompts on the topic cue card. If you think of something to add during your monologue or extended speaking part, then do add it in, as being more natural could possibly score you more marks. As an extra bonus, I wanted to show you something now that will maybe help you extend your speaking, especially during part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. I suggest to extend your speaking using the 5 senses, which are see, smell, hear, taste and touch. I'm going to show you some example sentences in describing a car. Let's begin with see. My new car is a beautiful blue colour. And now smell. The exhaust fumes are quite sickening. And now hear. It's a little sad, but the engine does sound great. And now for taste. Well, you wouldn't really taste a car. And next is touch. I added a really comfy leather steering wheel. By using the 5 senses, it will help you to quickly think of ways to really deeply describe something. So that brings us to the end of this lesson on how to answer Part 2 topic cue cards. I hope that you've learnt how to plan effectively for Part 2 and also got some extra tips to extend your speaking. See you in the next lesson.